Team, welcome. And James, welcome. James Doumtsis, everybody.
Thank you.
So, to give a little bit of background, we've just come out from a little hunt. It wasn't that many days. Like, we went in on Saturday afternoon. We got to have a little walk around. I've pretty much spent most of Sunday hunting. We had a little break over the lunch because it was so freaking hot. And then on Monday morning, we went out for another little look. And we were very fortunate enough to get onto some pretty cool different animals this weekend.
That was good.
Which we want to definitely talk about and dive deep into. Unfortunately, it didn't get any shots off, which is upsetting. But we learnt a lot, which is good. Or I learnt a lot. James was helping to teach me. I probably think we could have definitely gone on to more animals, but James has a tendency to fart a lot in the bush.
You said you'd leave that out.
He started off by saying, "Oh, just giving you a word of warning." He carries ducks in his pockets wherever we were. Sorry, mate, I had to drop you in the deep end.
Nah, it's all good.
We'll get deeper into it, but I mean, ideally, what we want to kind of do with this is we'll probably do a bit of a 2-part episode. Starting off talking about the hunt and where we kind of got to, what we kind of did, the different things that I learnt, and maybe you can dive in and say why you'd potentially do that and where your learnings have come from for that. And then hopefully that can help a lot of people out, because it's just basic stuff about being in the bush. And it's like, when I go out by myself, you don't really have to worry about anyone else, but at the same time, it's only you that you can blame. And then when I went out with James, it kind of made a lot of sense as to why things had happened previously, or why potentially I hadn't seen animals because I might have scared them off before I even got there. So to break it down, I think the first day when we got there, we just went out to a back paddock. It's got a creek that runs through it, and we're just walking through. There's a fig tree. So I think it's important to kind of figure out what trees are.
Yeah, definitely.
Or what your areas are, where your feeding patches might be. So a fig tree, because they're going to drop figs. It's got fruit. You said that the deer love it. I've never actually seen the deer on there, but
yeah,
pigs.
Deer and pigs, everything love it. And it's a good, like, their basic requirements are the same as ours in the sense of, food, shelter and water. In terms of shelter, like the fig trees are the perfect option because they're really dense growth. So like a great shade source, and then obviously most of them are clear underneath, and then at certain times of the year they also provide a food source in the sense of the figs. So like whether you're up like northern around Charters Towers, they love the figs up there, all the way down here. Like they're an incredible tree for both pigs and dogs and deer. And something that you were really trying to show me all weekend was like the best bedding spots, and it's always looking out for those sections that are thick in shade, but not so thick that the animal can't get in or out easily, because obviously they have to be alert for predators at all times. Yeah. So most of my, I suppose, background comes from like hunting chital and whatnot, and their favourite trees to bed up under something that's really like low foliage to the ground, so like acacias and whatnot, and like the quinine trees that are quite dense. But then underneath there's essentially very minimal cover. Like there might be a log or two that's fallen down in previous years from a storm or something like that. But whether it's, I think the main thing is you still get that breeze that's coming through, because if it's going to be 42 degrees, you want shade, but you also want, the wind coming through, because it makes it that much cooler. Whereas if you've got like this massive thick lantana bush sitting under a tree, I find that the wind, and this is just my personal experience, like other people might find it differently, but if you've got a massive lantana bush and it's 42 degrees, it's stagnant, and the wind's not going to be able to penetrate it as well. Pigs are slightly differently. They like a little bit more vegetation, and that's probably a predation thing from dingoes and wild dogs and whatnot. What are you saying with the pigs in regards to how hot their bodies can, like they can only get a certain temperature? Was it 25 degrees? Yeah, so anything over 25, pigs start to sort of feel uncomfortable. And then anything over 35, if there's a really good wind, they'll be, they can sort of manage it, but they're sort of pushing it. But anything over 40, they're struggling, like really, really struggling. It doesn't matter if it's blowing a gale. Yeah, it's essentially just bathing them in hot winds. So they're gonna be in or around the water, like anything over 42, and that's what a lot of blokes do sort of all summer. You see like Warra and like what's his name, Live the Hunt, Scotty, yeah, like those blokes, all summer long they're just smashing big paws, and it's because they have to be in the water. Like everything has to be in or within, 150 bedded around the water, and it's just a great opportunity because these boars during winter just disappear and you don't find them.
And so for that first day, we kind of thought, let's just go down the creek. We knew that there was some pigs about, and they were at the front and the back of the property, so they kind of got a split property. And so we're at the back, and we just decided that we'd walk through. The fig tree seemed like a good spot to go because of those reasons, but also being afternoon creek bed, it seems like they'd come out of that. That's kind of like their bedding spaces where it's cooler. But I mean, the very first thing is just like getting used to being with another hunter, I think. And it's interesting because you've talked about how you and Aiden hunt together quite a lot, and the different signs and things. And we're about probably 15 meters in, you're like, wait, when I stop, you stop. I'm like, of course. Like, I've been out with other people, and it's the same thing.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, me and Aiden, like, we almost have our own sign language where we could, I don't know, you share a womb together for 9 months and then plus together, hunt together for the rest of your lives, We've got it down pat to the extent that, he'll be 30 metres at another tree and I'm videoing him and he's saying, I'm going to shoot this stag out of 5 stags in a mob and, this is how far and this is what I've seen and, all that type of stuff. Yeah. But, like, in terms of just hunting with someone new, it's sort of like, okay, when I stop, you stop. If I do a little squeak, I want your attention, look at me.
So things like, is just like a good way to get attention without alerting all of the bush animals.
Yeah, that's right. And then, like, even when to the degree, if I want to, if you're 50 metres away from me, I won't just go, be loud. I won't full blow whistle at you. I'll try and imitate like a rosella or something like that. Something that's not recognised as a alarm call, like a butcher bird or something like that, or a carawong. Yeah. But something that they hear still every day. Yeah. And that's just because, like for a smart boar or a smart stag or something like that, they'll hear that, especially if they've been hunted before. Like, let's be honest, most critters in Australia, like, they've been hunted by multiple people and that's why they get smart. Yeah. Other people use whistles as a signal too. So, if someone just flat out whistles, and it's quite intrusive. I try and disguise it with something like a bird, but little squeaks and even like clicks and stuff like that, if you're only a couple of meters away, is what I'll generally sort of use. Yeah.
And it's hard, depending on how close you are to an animal, which we'll talk about later, about actually trying to alert and talk to people. Like, the communication thing can be really quite tough. So, exactly. And it's we'll get deeper into it as we go, but just little things in regards to like hand signs, like figure out your hand systems for stop, go, what the animal might be that you see, areas to look, and just kind of going from there. But that first day was good because it kind of just let us find our ground. We didn't really, we went like 600 meters maybe.
Oh yeah, nothing.
Like it was nothing.
We ran out
before
light.
But yeah. But it was good just to get that initial like, okay, this is how we're going to roll. This is the things we should be looking for and doing, which I think is really important to get out there because it's like you need to figure out that communication if you're going out with someone. And it just kind of, I guess, lines up for where you should potentially be looking when you first get to a property as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like you're always going to find dogs and boars on creeks, and then I mean the deer every so often come down to them, but they're cool, quiet, shady areas, a lot of feed in there. And we'll talk about that. And
so something that I was like, somewhere where I've seen the deer a lot is around the dams. And you kind of said to me on the first day, I think it was the first day, maybe the second day when we were going for it, that it's not actually something that you really focus on a whole heap. Like, yes, you know where they are, but you're not going to the water sources and waiting there for the deer as such. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I remember a couple of times I've sat at dams like all day. Pigs, I find it pretty good later, and same with wild dogs and troughs and whatnot. Up north when it's been hot all day, you might come have a big boar stroll in or a dog walk in at very last light. But yeah, me personally, I just have found never to really have much success with deer at all. Like, I don't think I think once I've shot, I had a friend come up and we got him a chittle off a trough. Yeah. But we knew that they were feeding that direction every day, and this stag just happened to go, I'm thirsty, and he walked off, and we were sort of able to ambush him at the trough. Yeah. But except for literally that one encounter, I've never really targeted, I suppose, animals at water, like in the sense that I've sat there all day and never seen a thing come in. Yeah. I find that most of the times they drink, at night or whatnot, or there's so much water, like there's generally so much water around, that they can get it from like a little tiny
puddle somewhere.
Yeah, a little tiny spring up in the rocks, or without having to, because obviously that's where they get targeted by other predators too. So wild dogs commonly frequent around water sources. So if they can not go there as much, then they're not going to get predated on.
And I think it probably highly depend on what the weather's like outside as well. And I know you've done a lot up north, and that's where they probably tend to go to cool off. But like it was a hot weekend, so we were lucky enough to find animals on
Yeah.
the water and in the water this
Yeah.
weekend. But so I guess that was the first thing. So we kind of kept the ridge lines off of the dam, which is where the reds will tend to be. And there was just a few things that you kind of taught me straight up. So I mean, in regards to the ridge lines, is looking at the skyline, and if you think about if you're looking up the ridge, making sure that you're not the person that's sticking out, because if you're moving along the top of the ridge, that's going to be, it just sticks out really clearly.
Yeah, there's always the easiest option is to walk on top of the ridge. There's always an incredibly prominent game trail on top. It's easy going, whereas like I was saying, you like being that sort of 20 meters off the top. So there's something's, and it's got to be like more, probably a quarter of the way down. Three quarters of the way up the ridge, or a quarter of the way off the top, is where I sort of like to walk. Because if something's looking from below, if you're only a couple meters down, I mean, your whole top half of your body is still, depending on how the angle of the ridge, your whole upper body is still going to be moving, and it just makes them so much easier to, like, being silhouetted and not having something breaking up your outline when you move is just massive.
Yeah, exactly. Sticks out like a sore thumb. You get caught too easy. And so, I mean, the other thing is when you're then having to cross over a ridge, is obviously the same sort of theory, that if you're coming from one side to the other side, you want to do it slowly, because if they're looking up, or if you make a noise, you would stick out just like a sore thumb once again. Is there, like, what are you tending to try to do when you come to, say, an opening, or when you're going over the top? Like, what is your kind of theory to it?
So if I'm going over, like, into the next basin or next valley system, generally it depends on how, like, most of the time it's not, you're not climbing like New Zealand hills into the massive basins. But if you go into like the next valley, what I would generally try and do is, if there'll be some form of cover, whether it be just a tree or, most of the times there's some form of bush or something on top, I'll always go straight over rather than sort of because any horizontal movements, whether you're stalking or just walking, it gets exacerbated. Whereas if you're going in a straight line, it's just your feet movement, and like, so your silhouette stays the same on the ridge. And then I'll also try and like put something like a bush in front of me, so that I walk up to it, essentially slip around it, and then I've still got it, but it's breaking up my outline now from behind, and they can't tell the difference if I'm in front or behind it from the bottom. And I suppose it's just like, a lot of people might listen to this and be like, oh, it's, why does he do that or whatever? But it's just a precaution. Like, it's all those, like, being a bow hunter, it's all about those 0.1 percentages. Yeah. And they all add up to, hopefully getting something at the end of the day. So the more of those little things, and it doesn't require any more effort, really.
No, exactly. It's just finding a point and working off of it.
Yeah, like, the more of those little efforts that you put in, it might mean at the end of the day you go home with something as opposed to not. So but yeah, like, it's just a precautionary thing that I think about, because, especially hunting with Aiden or something like that, or Dad, or anyone really, there's sometimes that you are walking the ridge and you've got someone else, hunting the bottom of the valley, and you look up and you're like, holy shit, like, and you think, because they're obviously in the grass or whatever, so you don't always see them first. Yeah. And you look up and you're like, holy, like, they just stand out so bad. Yeah. And, it happened a couple of times, like, and even dam banks, like, it doesn't have to be a massive ridge that you're on. Like, you come over a dam bank for a bedded boar. Like, all they need to do is open your eyes, and there's this big glowing thing, generally with, glowing limbs and potentially a GoPro on your head, or, in our sense, like a camera lens, like binoculars, all those optics, like, everything just shines like a Christmas tree. And then you got this big thing that's weird looking, like a log that's just popped up in front of you at 15 meters, holding shiny stuff. Like, you're not going to get, they're not going to hang around.
Of course, they're not going to stay still. I mean, something you even said when I first put on my hat was like, oh, just look at me for a sec, because you wanted to see if my badge on my hat was too shiny or not. Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, it's little things like that you don't really think of. I was actually a bit interested in the tusk, how they've got the tusk square just below your neck piece. I thought that might shine a little bit. It's like a good grey. Yeah. It doesn't, which is good. And so, I mean, we actually moved really slowly. And so where we pulled up was literally at the base of this ridge that we kind of walked into. And as soon as we jumped the fence into that little base that we were walking up the ridge, you were like, boom, straight on. Like, let's slow down. Let's start looking. Let's start glassing, making sure that everything, like, being really particular about making sure that we're kind of glassing over the whole range. And previously, I've kind of got to that part and been like, well, my car's here. If they're here, I've probably already spooked them over the hill, so I'm not going to bother. I'll walk up that hill, and then I'll start to go. Whereas it was like, no, as soon as we're out, we're going. We're very particular for it. Yeah. And like you said, like, you've been 5 meters from a tree from a base of a tree, and then all of a sudden you've noticed that there's a pig there,
Yeah.
or a animal there.
Oh, and like there's it's like just because you park the car, it depends on the hunting pressure of the animals. Like sometimes you park the car and you just know that there's not going to be anything for a couple of 100 meters because if they've heard it, they're going to go off. But obviously, being a family block, and I don't think it gets much hunting pressure. That block, because people are driving past them all the time.
Yeah.
So like they see a car and they don't have that negative association. Whereas, some of the places up north we hunt for chittle, like they get shot out of the car all the time. So they see a car and as soon as that car stops, they're gone. They're hitting the horizons. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, like we were walking up that ridge, it was quite densely, covered with vegetation. And I'm like, there is still every chance that they see the car and they might slowly they're feeding off away from it, but they're not just going to start running away.
Yeah.
And there's so many times that you get out of the car, you walk and you think, oh, there's not going to be anything for a couple of 100 meters. And that's when you bump, a dog walking your direction or, you get up on the ridge and you're like, oh, there's a stag there. And if you're just taking a little 5 minutes extra to walk a bit slower, because I feel like you're not going to really lose opportunities, but you can definitely spook them. Yeah, you're not going to lose opportunities later on, but you're definitely going to lose them in that section. So
I really liked you said to me at one point, like my most favorite thing and my most hated thing. Your favorite thing is when you're going into the new basin, so you're coming over the hill because there's every opportunity that you could see a new set of deer eyes or whatever anything. It might be. Whereas your most hated was when you get back to the car and the deer are right by the car.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than and it happens with chittle. Sorry about me talking about so much chittle. It's just sort of what I've hunted the most. But there's nothing worse than it happens all the time too. It kills me. But you do this massive loop. You're walking 12 Ks in the heat. You get back at 2 o'clock and the chittle are bedded 100 meters from your car. And it's just that you've literally taken you've gone to hunt in the morning and instead of taking a right, you've taken a left.
Yeah.
And you've done this massive loop, seen absolutely nothing. You get back, you're like, oh, shit. And then it becomes a question. It's like, oh, I ran out of water at 10 o'clock. I'm so thirsty, haven't eaten, starving, been out for 8 hours. And then it's like, do I stalk them?
That question.
Or do I, yeah.
The moment that makes hunters, hey?
Pretty well, yeah.
And so, we actually got up to the first ridge and we literally saw signs straight away. And it was cool because I didn't notice it at all to start with. And you're like, look, this is what you need to look for when you're looking out for, there was a rub.
Yeah.
And so it was just the fact that the tree itself was glowing in comparison to the other trees because the bark's been freshly scrubbed off. So the tree literally just it's like a light brown that glows more than the darker brown trees. And it's like, cool, that's something that I need to start looking out for. Once you see it, you're like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that I was looking for to start with. So I kind of had no idea for it. But it was, because then we started seeing them one after another pretty much. But it was cool to see that. However, something that you kind of pointed out was, hey, just because we're seeing rubs, it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that deer are here right now.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, and that's, I suppose that's a confusing point in the sense that, so I was saying we're going to sort of stay to that 3/4 upper ridge because it's quite, it's easy walking and like Kev's alluded before, stalking down on reds is so much easier than trying to battle up. It's so much easier to be quiet, and they, for some reason, just don't look up as much.
Yeah.
And so, we're sticking to the higher points, but the stags, you got to think, also do that. It's easier for them to walk on top of ridges than have to go up and down bowls the whole time because obviously that's hard work. And it's easier for them in the sense that they walk the ridges, they look down like, oh, I'm not seeing any deer, or I don't know, I know that Sally's not going to be down there or whatever, and so he just keeps walking and, he keeps rubbing as he goes walking. Yeah. And so we saw, I don't know, maybe 8 rubs that first morning. But the thing is, that could have just been one stag.
Just walking that
walking through, because we did, we walked around all the ridges of that sort of valley.
Yeah.
And that, one stag, it took us, a couple of hours. One stag easily would have walked that in less than that because he's searching for girls.
And like we said, we were moving quite slow, just kind of keeping an eye out, looking down into the valley, just like what you were saying the deer would do as well. Is try and take on that mentality of if you were a male deer looking for a girl, what would you be doing?
And the other thing is people see rubs and oh, it must be the biggest stag, I've heard people say it to me before. They're like, oh, when I see rubs, I know that there's a big stag in the area. But the thing is, spikers rub, so it doesn't always mean that it's some massive stag that's passing through. You could have had a spiker that came up and destroyed that, probably not the tree that we're looking at, just because you can look at the height of where the rubs go up to, and that was quite a significant rub. But, you know, like those tiny little saplings, when they're only done from, you know, nipple height on us down to a bit below your waist, like anything can do that. Like I've seen fellows do bigger ones than that. So, yeah.
So, which trees are they mainly targeting and why?
Well, it depends on the deer species, but like, so the reds like seem to be loving those sort of stringy bark trees, and they don't target, like they'll target ones that are, I don't know, maybe a bit, depends, I was going to say how big is your calf, but it depends how big your calves are. You know, so sort of that, if you put your fingers together, sort of that roughly size.
Yeah.
And then also sort of anything small than that. So they love the stringy barks, and then also pretty much everything just loves saplings because they can sort of strengthen their neck muscles fighting, and it sort of gives it, like, it's not as rigid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of a signpost and also practicing for the rut to come.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know the species of the saplings. Like most of the time they're going to be a eucalypts, but I've seen them on like black wattle and all that type of stuff too. So
bits and pieces of everything.
Yeah.
And I think we even saw that this weekend. There was a mix and match of lots of little saplings, but it was the stringy barks with them.
Yeah, they love them.
Kind of get into.
Yeah.
And I mean that first morning we spent a lot of time just kind of going around. And the winds in the property that we were on are unfortunately not great. They change a lot because it's hilly. There's a lot of valleys and ridges.
Being in the mountains in general.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'd be walking one direction with a plan, and then all of a sudden we'd have to change that plan really quickly because the winds would blow the opposite direction and just kind of ruin things. Which I think in itself is a lesson. You just need to kind of play the winds a lot. But once we'd get over one side of the mountain, the winds would be completely different to the other side. So it's like that ridge can be such a big play on how the day is. So sometimes it is even worthwhile just getting over that ridge, sitting down for a little bit, and just checking the winds as you go, just to see how it is.
It comes back to just knowing a property too, because so it might blow different on each side of the ridges, but generally it will blow consistently different, if that makes sense, all the time on those each side of the ridges. And that's, you know that, okay, I've got to approach this from this angle because it's going to go blow that way. Even though, like for me in Victoria, I'm checking all the time and it says, it's going to be blowing from the south. Yeah. And then you get there and it's blowing from the north in that section. And you're like, what the hell's happening here? You know, like, but that's the thing. You learn that, okay, on this ridge it's going to go, it's going to go, obviously you got to check your thermals all the time, depending on what time of day. But, like I write down, this face or like Sandy Hill or whatever, what it is. Yeah. I'll say, today it was blowing from the east, mainly. It's always going to swirl. Yeah. And then that's just knowing, on the place that you're hunting, with direction it's going to go on certain faces and whatnot at times of day because it always changes. And that's like just knowing the place to increase the advantages of getting out there and getting something.
And so something you just says you'd write it down. So something you brought up later is that you keep a game trail pretty much, but a game diary. Yeah. So you'll write down timing that you kind of saw them, the winds, what it was doing, where it was, things to look out for. Like I said, the time of day that it was that the deer were doing that thing or that the pig was doing that thing. And I think that's very valuable as well.
Yeah, it more just makes, the more I critically evaluate it, the more it makes you just think about it. Like you might see something, you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. They were there at that time of day and it was raining and the wind was doing this. You're like, yeah, that was cool. You sort of think about it, but it's not until you really start sort of breaking it down more. You're like, okay, well, why were they there? And then you're like, okay, they were there for these, what I think these factors are. I could be completely wrong. Yeah. But you're like, I think it's these factors that is why it's, they were in that little tight gully when it was absolutely pissing down hail and the wind was blowing up, so like all the trees were shaking and everything like that, and that's why I think they were there. And so the next time it happens, you go there, and I mean, they could be not there. Yeah. Or they're there, and you're like, okay, well, now I know that in these settings, they're probably going to come back to this really sheltered area. And the more I found that I suppose, thought about things, whether it be that shelter or vegetation, a lot of it came down to like wind and weather conditions and stuff. Yeah. I found that they were, I'm like, oh, okay, it's been really cold overnight. So first thing in the morning, they're going to be on those eastern slopes, so they're getting the sun. Yeah. Then you're okay, and then you're like, okay, this one out of all the eastern slopes has the best feed at the moment. And then you go there and you're like, oh, I just saw 20 deer. And so you sort of get that, I suppose, positive reinforcement. Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then, like I said, the more I started to think about it, the more almost factors in my head I started to be like, oh, okay, maybe it's, I don't know, like that. Like moon phases and that type of stuff. Yep. Not that I've tried figuring it out for that. Yeah. and it's more when things hit water and stuff in New South Wales. But yeah, like just random factors.
So, I mean, something you said to me was like, for instance, it was a pretty full moon this weekend. And it could be that the moon was shining so bright that they had enough light to be able to feed through the whole night.
Yeah.
But then they bed early because they don't need to keep going for certain things.
And especially for the running, like they can go wild essentially at night because they can see more.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense because it's something like, but previously it's something I had never really thought of. It's like, oh, full moon and no, like new moon or an old moon, whatever, like that would make. People have said that it makes a difference, but I never knew why.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a good reason as to why it might change a few things.
Yeah.
But also based on, I guess, your, like Kev was saying about the solstice. Like summer solstice, winter solstice, how that makes such a big play on it as well. We continued to walk around through the ridges and looking down into the basins. And it was... I think it like you guys are quite and from what Aiden said as well, you guys are both quite methodical with the way that you do it. Like you'll kind of take a few steps and glass because each new space you go is a new perspective.
Yeah.
And something that you said to me was statistically speaking, every time we glass, we're a percentage closer to getting a deer.
It's because like me carrying a camera and then carrying the bow on my shoulders, like glassing can be a bit of a pain in the ass. But I just like. You got to have these little things that make it like, that's like before when I was saying about the ridge, like if we haven't seen anything, technically speaking, every time we walk over a new ridge, we're more likely than the previous ridge to see something. And same with like the glassing, like statistically speaking, the more we glass, we're more likely by 0.00001% chance, more likely to see something in this, section of looking through my binoculars than the last one. It's like, I don't know, just dumb shit that you got to tell yourself when you spend all day like in the sun.
Helps. I mean, it's good just to have a few laughs when you're out and about.
Oh, that's right.
You've been out there for a few hours already and you haven't seen anything. You're like, well, James definitely doubted me. He's like, there's not reds here, dude. Like, you don't have deer on this property.
I'm like, anyone can rub trees with machetes, man. Like,
you've been up here a few days before, haven't you?
A few tracks around the dam. Yeah, sure thing.
And so we actually, because the winds were so bad, we weren't sure what to do. We ended up coming off of the ridges and going off to a section where I've seen them crossing quite a lot. And we went down to look for more sign. Once again, the wind wasn't in our favour, so we had to do like kind of a big old loop. And then we got into a section and once again we started seeing these rubs. So it's like the places where they're hanging out to some extent, but once again we couldn't see the deer. So
it was getting quite like where we went sort of later in that morning was it was like an incredible feeding area in the sense there was like heaps of legumes there and quite short growth, like regrowth. So you can see, like you said, it was a transition area sort of thing, and a fantastic bedding area, and then fantastic feeding area that then went into like a pretty lightly, I suppose, sapling bedding area with like sort of thickets and whatnot, and that's where a lot of the rubs were sort of found, like in that in between the sort of feeding to bedding area. And that's the thing, like we could have had deer within 50 meters of us in those thickets,
we just couldn't see
and just not see them, or they just sneak out the back, or especially with the wind being the way it is. Like one thing I do really like about chital hunting is you're like, oh, there's some chital like 500 meters away, and then all of a sudden like tails are raised and they're all like running away, and you like check the wind and you're like, oh, that's why they're running away. But at least you've seen them.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like this, you could have a deer at 100 and the wind's been beautiful all day, and then it swirls and you don't notice, and they smell you and run off, and you never get that sort of satisfaction of that's what happened. I don't know, but
but it's true, right? Like it's a boost up when you see an animal in the wild.
Oh, like every encounter's like, oh yeah, finally found something. It's like whistling in a fox, and you're like, I wonder if this, this stand where you're calling in is going to get something, and then you see the fox, and it's almost just like, called one in finally, and then you got the next step of, okay, let's try and get this, on film, or shoot it or whatever, So
like a bad day in the bush is still a good day, but it's even better if you see something. You're like, ooh, my day just got a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, that's right. Just being around animals is good. Whether it's like you stalk in on a mob of roos and you're sitting 5 meters off them, just taking photos.
Just actually watching.
Yeah, or even us. Like we saw on one of the days, what do you call them? Those caterpillars.
Oh, a little like hairy, I don't know, what was it called? Itchy grubs.
Itchy grubs, yeah. But they're essentially like all these thousands and thousands, like meters of caterpillars just like walking through the bush. And just seeing that was like, and for me, like Dad's really drummed into us about like Australia's native wildlife in terms of birds and stuff. So I'll be walking and see like a kingfisher or a pardler or a type of finch or something. I'm like, God, that's cute. Like that. And that's those little things, like you see a kingfisher take a yabby on the side of a dam and you're like, didn't see anything the whole time, but I saw that and it was pretty unreal.
It was like we were talking about the different birds just later on. Like once we'd finished, we were talking to my auntie about like, oh, I saw this little bird, and I saw this little bird. It's like, oh, you saw that one too. There you go. Like, yeah, those little moments you kind of take appreciation for. Yeah. Those itchy grubs, I don't actually know what they're called, but they build like essentially like a big web nest.
Yeah, right.
And there's stories of people like if you touch the grubs themselves, you get pretty itchy. But there's stories of people like they'll be on their horse and their horse walks them through one of these nests and then they just get covered in like itchy,
microscopic
itchy
spines.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty crazy. So I mean that first morning we kind of did the loop and the winds were off for the section that I really wanted to take you to. And we're like, let's just head over and we'll do a big old loop of the space and we'll have a check out and just sort of see what it's like. And we got over into it and it's kind of like there was a ridge that was protecting it. By the time we got over the ridge, the winds were doing something opposite in that space. So it kind of meant that we could go for a little wander through. And this was pretty late in the morning. I think that was about 10:30, 11 that we started kind of going down through there.
Well and truly heated up by then.
Yeah, and it was like I said previously, it was a hot day. Like it was hotter than...
And humid too.
Yeah. Like I was there in January and this is now April. No, not in April yet, are we? In March still. So 24th of March maybe we were out and it was just toasty. Like I think it was more hot than when I was there in January, which is crazy. Yeah. So anyway, we kind of just went down into this little space. And made bets on where the deer would be.
He's describing these betting areas to me. I'm like, I bet you $10 is going to be under that tree. I was wrong. But but just the way, like it obviously made sense, like him describing it to me, I'm like, he's obviously now thinking about where they're most likely going to be bedding up in it. Because you've got these whole creek systems, but within that you've got spots. Yeah. And you can either learn that about thinking, where they're going to bed up, and then looking there more specifically, or you just get used to putting up deer and then you're like, okay, eventually you realize you're like, okay, I put them up there in this spot 3 times in a row. Maybe I should walk a bit slower before I just,
sneak into that spot.
Yeah, sneak in a bit more rather than just like trample through and, put them up every time.
Yeah, I've put up deer there a bit now.
I was going to say, we've all done it. Like, I'm saying that I'm like...
Hence why I was like so keen to get you into that space. I'm like, this is where we need to be, I swear. So we did that and then we kind of called it. We're like, okay, it's getting probably it's too hot. Let's just go back. We'll have some lunch.
But I think the biggest thing was we went down there and there was the most sign that we'd like around that dam. Yeah. You could see it was incredible feed. There was sort of 3 valleys feeding into it that had like really, like you see up and I was saying, I really want to walk that one. Yeah. That's where all the trees are. And you can see everything where it just looked really good for deer.
It's quite secluded from everything else. Like it's away from the road.
Yeah, that's right. You got to walk a ridge to get into it. Like you're saying, like there's no road access or anything like that. And the biggest thing for me is rubs. Like I say that, like when we did the walk, but if you've got multiple access points coming in and, you can look around and sort of see, 10 trees up that direction, 10 trees up that direction. And you're like, well, clearly there's going to be something, like they're regularly frequent. Like it's not like he's going to walk in and go, okay, I'm going to rub this tree and that tree and that tree and that tree and that tree all in this afternoon. Like that's showing, regular,
access
and
coming in.
Yeah. And routine, I suppose, to hitting that dam. And obviously it's a social area within that because I don't think there was any other water.
Yeah, not too close. Like there's little patches in the creek.
Yeah, because that had rain. Yeah.
But but that was something recent. So that's within the last week that they had a lot of rain. So it's like maybe if they were in their routine already, they're not really going to change that too much.
It depends how wet. Like you might have little splashes and stuff that they'll go down to.
And so I mean, we kind of called it that morning. We went back, and I was keen to go back there, but you're like, we need to think about how many times you're going in these locations because obviously you're dropping your scent around them. You're entering the space where they're going to regularly, so you need to be careful about that. So I guess it's hard because on a property, if you've got access and it's not a massive property, then you're only limited to that spot. So what should you do in that situation, or what have you done previously in that situation compared to if you've got access to multiple spaces that you can go and jump from spot to spot?
Yeah, I suppose it is sort of hard, and we've definitely had it with one of our tutor places in the sense that they're only around a lake, and then they're a little bit around the house. And now it's sort of gotten a lot better and whatnot. But and same, and talking about these reds, like I just said, I'm like, well, okay, so what's the plan for this afternoon? And we've only got one, that morning hunt afterwards. Like, we can't just keep hitting it
Yeah,
because
over
essentially,
and over
like,
and
even
over.
if we're not like, we didn't see any deer in there in the morning, but they're probably going to be there in the afternoon. But so if we spook them, then like, what's our option? Are we just going to go back and spook them again? Like, or are we going to go back and put more scent on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you're only doing that day and a half hunt, it doesn't like it. If it doesn't really matter, I suppose, that much. Like, in the sense that we could have hit it 3 times, but if you're there for a week, like, you can't just sit on the dam. I mean, probably could, but I do it like from a tree stand or something like that, where you just sit on the dam and just spend 7 days. It'd be like whitetail hunting, and you'd hate yourself at the end of it. But take a book. Not that I've done it, but yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I suppose it just comes back to what we did was we talked. I talked to my Chittle property owners like probably at least every month, and I mean, I haven't been up there in the last year, but it's just finding out where the deer are, and that's what we end up doing. We're like, okay, well, where have you actually seen game that we're interested in, being wild dogs, pigs, and deer?
Yeah.
And I'll get the farmer to go, okay, on this creek I've seen the deer twice, and you sort of just start patterning it, and then me doing it so regularly, like, okay, even though I haven't been to that creek ever, they're frequently seeing the deer there.
Yeah.
So it's going to be worth a walk, And then the other thing is, even if they haven't seen somewhere, like, you might talk to someone like, yeah, we've got this creek, it's way off in the middle of nowhere. We have never seen anything on it, but it's got, really, like, you just got to know what questions to ask them to find where the good habitats are. Or one thing I specialize of asking is, have you had any deadies or kill it? Have you had any cows die?
Yeah. Is there any carcasses on
Is
the
there any
property?
carcasses around? Because, like, I mean, that's like a
Feeding
always changing thing that, that spot is only going to be incredible for a week.
Yeah.
But, if it's in the week that you're there, you go hit it every
Sure.
arvo or first thing in the morning, like, you're pretty, and especially if it's like drought conditions, like, they're going to be chasing that protein. So I suppose it's just working out what questions to ask and knowing what things, like I was saying about the fig trees and stuff before, like knowing what features animals need for comfort, because they're not going to just be under any tree.
No.
It's like, not like, we don't, the same with us, we're all cushy. We all love our $5,000 beds and living in great houses. I mean, we could live under a tarp. Yeah. But we don't want to. Like, no one wants to do that.
No.
Except for maybe the Stojanovski boys or whatever when they go to New Zealand. But, like, no one wants, like, everyone wants to have the best of the best. And so the pigs and stuff are the same. So, knowing what things drive them and what they're looking for, if you've got to find new spots to hunt, that's where I'd start. On top of asking just the owner where they've seen them before and cheating your way into it.
I mean, for us, we actually had to help my auntie do a few jobs, and we went and did that. And one of the things was moving the cattle because there was potentially a lot of rain coming, and they were in a space where they could have been flooded in, which was not favourable. So we moved them from the section, and when we were down there, we were looking around, and we're like, oh, there's definitely pigs around here. Like, there's lots of sign about. So we're like, okay, this is a space that we should come and hit. So we moved all the cattle out. And we're like, do we go back to the dam where the deer have been seen previously, where they weren't this morning, or do we go down and have a look for these pigs because there's pigs about? We know that there's sign, so there's a fair chance they're going to be down there. So we decided that for the afternoon, because the winds were perfect for it as well, that we should head down there. And sure enough, that's where we went and got onto some pigs, which was great. Yeah. So the creek system kind of goes through. And there's spots that are really cool and spots that aren't. It's kind of like a double-laid creek, I'd say. Like there's two beds,
banks.
Yeah, 2 banks to it. And some parts there's like a lot of water, and other parts there's not much water at all. And we were just kind of going through. Previously, the pigs have made like their own little highway systems through it. They kind of uproot bits and pieces all through the place, but then they end up having like their own little walkways that they just go straight through.
Tunnels.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy to see. And we just kind of just kept walking and looking for sign. Well, not as quiet in the afternoon, obviously, with the pigs. But it was like move.
It was quite, because it was quite thick, and you got low-lying branches grabbing you and stuff. Like realistically, probably should have. We got lucky that we spotted them like all the way up the creek. Yeah. And I mean, like at that stage, I don't think we'd scared anything. No. But yeah, like we probably should have been going slower. Okay. Like when you're stalking like bedded, or they were sort of that in that transition between immediately getting up. And feeding around where they bed and still being bedded. Like a lot of the bigger boars and whatnot would have been bedded still at that stage. And so if you're chasing them, like you really do need to be slow, because a lot of the time you don't see them until you're like 6 meters from them, or less than 20 essentially, and then you're like, oh, there's a snout there, and then you're like, because that's what you're looking for. Like they're not going to be just bedded, like they're not going to be like the deer where they're going to be bedded under a tree, like they sometimes are, but in the open with no vegetation around them, like they're going to be bedded in that thick lantana bush, or under a just fallen tree, or under the cut out bank or the roots, or so you're only seeing an ear or an arse,
and then they're digging themselves in as well usually.
Yeah, that's right. They're making a bed as well. They're not just lying down in the dirt. So they've dug themselves at least a third of their body into the sand. So you're not really getting a great look, and hence they're always in that dark, cool spot. So you're walking a bit too fast, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a pig there, or they run out. You know. But if you can see them, because then the next thing is like if you can see them beforehand and a bit further away, finding a gap generally to shoot through can be like an absolute nightmare. You know, like sometimes you're shooting through, and like I'm not that good of a shot, but sometimes you're trying to shoot through somewhere the size of your palm, you know, to sink an arrow through there at and you're only shooting like 12 meters, whatever. But that's why I say to people, practice at 5, practice at 8, practice at 10, and know where your bow is going to shoot at all those distances, because I know at 10 my bow shoots about an inch high when I'm using my 20 pin. Yeah. Okay. So that if I never ever need to shoot through a log, I essentially aim for the log, and then it goes through the hole. Because before I've shot at the log, or try to shoot through a hole, and then I've hit the top log, the top side of the hole, essentially. And that's just knowing how your bow shoots.
Yeah. Which is very valuable. Like, I think a lot of people practice at 40, 30, like those long shots.
Oh, it just depends how you're going to be, what and how you're going to be hunting. Like, I like shooting like less, like 30 meters. Is sort of the far end of my range and abilities, I suppose. Yeah. So, I like shooting less than that, and I just find it more intimate with the animal, The reason why, for me anyways, I use a bow is because I want to get in nice and close. Yeah. Like,
get to see them in their livelihood.
Yeah, and it's quiet too. Like, you take an animal out of a group, and they know something's happened, but sometimes you can shoot multiple. Whereas you're never going to be with a rifle, you might be able to shoot multiple, but they're running off over the distance, and
yeah, exactly. And so we kind of saw these pigs down the creek, like you alluded to before, and we were like, do we go straight down and shoot across the bank, or do we jump around the other side? And the winds were kind of blowing across, so it could have been that we got to the other side of them, the wind would have blown behind us and spooked us. So we decided to climb back, go back around, and then come up the creek towards them. So cross the creek and go towards them, because they were feeding up towards us. And we got to this pretty good opening space where they were coming into. We were kind of on the game trail to get there. There was a little bit of a mound which you climbed up to start filming, and I went down at the lower of the mound next to the game trail. To set the scene, there was these two big decent lantana bushes, and the pigs were kind of behind that, and there was one decent sow up to the far right of me, which James couldn't actually see, I don't think, because it was blocked by the hill sort of mound. And so I've climbed down, and I was walking in along the game trail, and then one of the pigs started walking through the game trail, whereas the other two were feeding off of the game trail. Yeah. And then there was the one pig up to the far, and it was the one that I had the best sight on, but there was one that was probably 8 meters
close. Yeah. Like you just needed them to. They're almost feeding in sort of a little cove of the lantana bush, they were starting to feed out. Yeah, exactly. They only needed to take a couple more steps out, and it would have been all over in a close 10-meter shot.
So the issue was the one that was far away from me, there was a big lantana bush that was sticking right over its vitals, so I couldn't take a shot without making a lot of movement down or up, which I couldn't go any taller, so I had to be down. But there was a pig that was about 8 meters from me, so if I moved too fast or dropped down, I was afraid that it would spook and kind of run off. And I was just waiting for that one that was about 8 meters to kind of move out that little bit more so I could take the shot on it. Yeah. And then, did I actually draw back? I don't think I drew back at all.
No, I don't think so.
No, until one of them made a little noise. A warning sound to the rest of the pigs, and all of them just scram!
Go on. So what ended up happening was, there was obviously, they just got up from bedding, and so there were still pigs in that lantana. And whether the wind swirled or whether one of them just sort of looked up, because they would have only been a couple of meters in there, and you can hear them moving around and stuff. But one of them sort of let out a grunt. Yeah, and it's sort of just a signal to everyone that something wasn't right. And so they all sort of took off down the creek. But then everything always stops, so and that's what happened. They stopped at Like the closer ones ended up stopping at like 30, and I think that's when you drew.
Well, yeah, and so I drew, and I had a pretty good shot for about a second on this
they'd never
pig,
sit still for that long.
exactly. And so I didn't get a chance at that one, and they decided like, yeah, it's time to get out of here. So they took a little sprint up the creek, and I kind of looked at James, and he's like, "Are you upset?" I'm like, "No," and he's like, "Good, because you did right, like you did well there.
You did well.
It wasn't like it wasn't necessarily because of something you did."
Yeah,
but my position probably, yeah, exactly. Position possibly wasn't the best, and that.
Oh, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, you could have maybe taken a step out to the left or right to try and get those pigs earlier, but like, you know, like I said, like they could have nothing. Like that sow could have, or whoever, you know, the wind could have. If it was the wind could have held strong for another 10 seconds, and they would have walked out, and you would have had a perfect broadside shot at 8 meters.
Yeah,
you know. In the same sense, a piglet could have walked past, she could have hit that, but not been looking your way and seen something, you know, and you could have got that 10 seconds in. Like, there's so many factors that, like, obviously critically assess every stalk you do to the point that, okay, what was I happy with? What was I not happy with? Just like having a shot sequence, really, when you shoot.
Yeah.
You know, what could I have done better or worse or differently?
In hindsight's always a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it just means that later on, it gives you more options and stuff that you didn't think about. Like, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack about a stalk that I had recently, but I was stalking these red deer on a bank, and I thought I was trying to self video at the time, which was a pain in the arse in itself, but I ended up having to like crawl through all this grass and ended up getting like, they got up to feed and I got busted at about 35 trying to set up the camera and then like move in to go and take one for meat. And I thought about it, wasn't until afterwards I thought about it, that there was like a massive, they were bedded on the bank pretty much under some pine trees. And the only other, like another option which I didn't even cross my mind would have been to do a massive circle, like 600 meter circle, right, and cut all the way out because the wind was blowing a certain way. Cut all the way out and come in the middle of a field that had just been ploughed with no cover at all. But this mound would have just been completely blocking their view, and I would have got to the mound, and then I literally could have popped over, and I would have been 20 meters from it. But like the thought of doing a massive 600 meter circle with no cover at all, except for like, you know, distance being my cover, like, you know, walking 200 meters away and then propping over a little lip and then like, you know, but still being able to walk the whole time. Yeah. And so the stalk would have taken me as long as it takes to walk, like essentially just walk 600 meters and would have put me in a better spot than having to you know, crawl on my ass for an hour, which probably took me like 40 minutes. And by the time I got there, they were up and feeding and stuff. Yeah. You know, so, and it's not until afterwards I'm like, well, you know, and then, so, but it's like, because I thought about it, now if I'm ever in a stalk again, like you think, okay, well, maybe a big circle is an option. Yeah. You know, and so in terms of your stalk, like, I still don't think there would have been anything. Maybe if you came high like me, but then we got two big blokes, you being a big bloke and me being a
still same
average bloke, walking that high up on the thing. Like, I mean, they could have easily looked up and we would have been slightly silhouetted and they could have been like, oh, well, there's something
there. Yeah.
I'll standing on hill. You know, and that would.
I actually said to you, like, do I come up and around? Like, we're trying to signal, am I up and around or down and around? And you're like, no, go down and around. Yeah. And my first step that I took was like, crunched everything I possibly could. I was like, fuck. And he's like, don't worry, just keep going.
Found every stick in the area. Crunk.
Yeah, and so at that stage, like they ran off, and I turned to James after he's like, oh, are you upset? I'm like, nah. And I'm like, what could have I done better? And he's like, oh, there's a few things that we'll talk about as we go. I'm like, have we just ruined that? Like, have they gone? He's like, no, they'll be up the hill. They'll be just up the creek a little bit. So it was cool. We kind of, it's good to have that assurance, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's why pigs are great, because like, especially sows and stuff, like they're all mature sows, you know, 40, 50 kilos, but on good feed, those pigs might only be like a year to 18 months old. So they're not like they're fun to shoot and they're mature and they're good, but they're like pigs and goats are like, I tell everyone that's just starting out, go and get them. Like deer are not like, deer are frustrating for everyone, you know, whether you've shot hundreds, like they're still, I don't know, like there's other people out there heaps better hunters than me, but I've been hunting for a while. I still really struggle with hunting deer. Like,
it's not a walk in the park.
And it's not like we do things because we get, you know, positive reinforcement. Like, you know, if you go out in the bush, and some people go out in the bush and they're like, just to hunt and kill something, you know, like that's their objective. Like, I go out in the bush because I like being in the bush and seeing things, but also I want to take meat home or a trophy home at the end of the day. And so for those people that just want to go out and kill something, like the positive reinforcement of shooting something for deer might not come for a couple of years. Yeah. And so those people aren't the ones that stay in the sport, because you're going out and, you know, they might shoot something the first time they go out, you know, like I'm just talking just from what I've seen, you know. like, there's very few people that just walk in the bush, and you might get lucky and the stag walks past you and you shoot a 28-inch sambar on your first day because you sat on a wallow. Like, these stories exist.
Yeah.
But most people struggle for a couple of years and they shoot one, and it's that incredible satisfaction. But pigs and goats and foxes and rabbits and all those type of things, like, you get that satisfaction early because you get more opportunities to stuff up, and generally you get more opportunities to even just have a stalk and practice. And then for a lot of people, like, stalking those sows was awesome. Like, I still love stalking stuff.
Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Like, and so it's a lot better than deer for new people.
Definitely. I mean, so for us, we then went up, and I actually hadn't seen them yet. You're like, oh, yeah, they're just up here at this tree. I'm like, where? Like, I couldn't see them at all. And you're like, so this is what we're going to do. We'll take our shoes off here.
Yeah.
We'll drop our packs. We'll just kind of get up. And what we'll do is just use this tree to block, like, use that fat tree to block the line of sight. And kind of walk up to this tree, and that's where you take your shot from. I'm like, yeah, perfect. So we did that. Got in pretty close to them. It was pretty dense where they were, so there wasn't good shot opportunity. Yeah. And so I started to keep walking in closer to them, and it was pretty heavy leaf cover. But there was some, like, if I'd got to this point, it would have been pretty good shots. But with the leaf coverage, I took some steps that were probably a bit risky. And at the time, the pigs, you said that they were already onto me before I actually...
Yeah, just the vocalizations they were letting out. And then their body language that, like... So, like, if they're moving, like if they're rooting up or, rocking their body forwards, they're concentrating on getting that root or, that grub or whatever they're doing. But there was a couple of times that I don't think you picked up on that, like, pigs when they're when they're feeding, they'll vocalize a heap. Yeah, like, sometimes you'll in thick stuff, you'll hear them, before you see them. And that's just like, I'm over here. And like, that sounds like, they're doing that type of stuff. But there's sort of a slightly longer, and I'm talking 15th longer tone where they're like, and then and generally everyone stops talking after that. Yeah. And they've still got their head down, but they're listening. They're like, okay.
There was one step that I took with that one of them was like, oi.
Yeah.
And all just stopped. Like, I'm like, fuck, here we go.
Yeah.
I've ruined it.
Yeah. Oh, like that. And that's why sows are great, because they'll give you 10 chances. They'll see you and be like, might be. Like,
maybe.
If I catch him another twice moving or, make a noise, then I might go. But, and that's why they're great to start on, Yeah. But yeah, like, there was, because what would happen was, even with me trying to weave through all that thick stuff with a, tripod extended. Yeah. They'd go, and I'd just stop. Yeah, but the difference is you take that one more step, and they're like, oh, the is I think I heard something over there, or I think I saw something move, and I'd stop. But then you might take that other step, and then that goes, okay, confirmed, there is something moving over there, or I've seen something, I've seen that weird looking with blonde hair take another step, So that's sort of picking, like, you get more chances if you can read and it's just reading body language is sign, and yeah. But, like, you'll know to look for it now next time when you go out. Yeah,
exactly. I think that time when I took the extra step, I was behind the tree and I was watching you, and you started walking, so I started walking. And you stopped as I was in the middle of a step. I'm like, fuck.
Crack.
Like, no.
Let me find that biggest stick.
Yeah, exactly. And so once again, I spooked them and they ran off. And so we kind of had to follow them through this little creek bed a little bit further. And I found out I'm not very good at stalking on sand at all. So James was like, okay, we're just going to cross this over, be pretty quiet on this stuff, and they'll probably just be up in this grassy bed here. And so he's like, dunk, 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 across it. I'm like, and so he's like, no, you're just stepping wrong. So I was trying to tiptoe through it. Yeah. Which is bad because...
And like little heaps of, like, I did it in 3 big steps. He did it in 8 little, loud... earth moving.
And so it's because I was trying to tiptoe, and I think what would happen there is obviously you dig all of your pressure in, and eventually your whole foot touches the sand and moves it all. Yeah. Whereas you're like, no, go heel toe as you're walking in the bush.
Yeah, so you just like gently try and just place it, down. You don't just like...
Which is like surface area.
Flop it down.
Makes a lot of sense. You kind of, putting a little bit of space, a little bit of pressure on a lot of space compared to all of your pressure in one space.
Yeah. And like, and slowly, like it's literally like heel toe. Like it's like heel toe. Yeah. So like placing it, it sort of lets the sand move in a shh rather than a shh. Yeah. Sort of thing. So like, this is how loud in decibels it's going to travel. Yeah. So if you're like slowly putting it down, it is, it might be an elongated sound, but it's not going to be as loud as well.
Yeah. And so we came up onto this like bank. It was like they'd kind of moved onto the top bank compared to being. Oh, yeah. And so
they're sort of rooting around.
Yeah, exactly.
Like transitioning through the creek.
We'd watch them, and there was parts where if you weren't there, I probably would have gone like across the creek and try to keep going. Whereas you're like, no, just give it a sec. Like, wait 2 minutes, and they'll be over this part, and they'll be blocking their vision of us, and we'll make that ground up.
Oh, you can pretty much run,
Yeah, exactly.
That's one thing. So there's always like within a creek, there's going to be that soft, wet sand that gives you the, sort of. And then there's always going to be sort of a harder, drier, game trail that everything walks on. Or if there's like vegetation within the sand, it sort of just helps you cushion and not have that. Like it doesn't. It's when the sand moves that makes noise. So because it's a bit compacted and it's got maybe a bit of dirt mixed into it, and the vegetation sort of spreads your surface area, it doesn't make as much noise. But yeah, like I think you were sort of a bit concerned. We were maybe 200 meters off the pigs now because they were feeding because it was sand. They weren't rooting up as much.
Yeah.
And then, I could see you sort of wanted to go, but I'm like, we'll catch them, like so easily. And as soon as they went over that lip, like you just walk, you're not stalking, you know where they've gone.
Yeah.
Like, and you just walk and we made up, because then they got into an area where they were rooting up and, starting to find, actually they ditched the piglets in that lantana bush.
It's
and
like they came to another group of pigs, I think.
Yeah.
And so they dropped some pigs off and picked up a whole heap of
new ones.
Pigs,
yeah.
And they kind of went for a trek.
But yeah, you don't have to another option like creeks and anything feeding. It's so hard to sometimes keep up with them. Like everyone talks about those big boars where they're just getting on the march, and they're moving somewhere. They're going to look for girls or they're going to feed or whatever, and they just start tracking. Yeah. And so you can follow them, and sometimes they'll stop for they find that sweet spot of grass or they find an area they want to root up for a minute, and that's your opportunity. And I think that's something that you probably didn't capitalize more on. Like when they were around that tree in the first bit, that was like the only time that they all really held up for, a couple of minutes. And I think we probably dicked around too much, taking off our boots and stuff like that, but we probably should have just got in there, capitalized, got it done.
Yeah.
Because when you're following stuff, you often, you follow stuff for ages, but you only get
like a few placements.
A few opportunities that they stop for any longer than a period. Because then you have heaps of those moments where like that, they got 200 meters in front of us and then you really push in, you get back on them, but then they feed off again. You can't push in with them because you're too noisy or whatever. So like when they do stop, you sort of just got to go, quietly but quickly, just get in, get it done. That's it.
I think the other thing, that valley section where I potentially could have had a shot, I misjudged how far it actually was because it had essentially like a creek in between us. So it was like a dip in between us. And so I was like, oh, that's got to be 35, 30.
Yeah. And
when I actually got my rangefinder out and scanned it real quick, I was like, it's only 19. I scanned it like 3 more times just in case. I'm like, there's no way.
Dead ground's and that's why so I've got going to hunt reds now for a little bit. And I said to Dad, I'm like, please give me a rangefinder. Because shooting across creeks or up and down hills and everything.
Do you not have a rangefinder?
No, not normally.
There you go.
We don't normally need one. Normally it's sort of less than that 25. So when I'm I shoot a single pin sight, I just leave my thing on. The only time it sometimes gets me is hunting foxes that are eating crickets in a field because it's but most of the time I just don't have one. But for this trip, I said to Dad, I'm like, please give me a rangefinder because like what you just found out, you got all this dead ground between us, or it's really steep, and you're like, shit, they look like they're miles below me. Yeah. And then you range them, and they're only like 20 meters, but it looks like they're at the bottom of the gully. Yeah. And that's why rangefinders are great, but it's also dead ground just plays with your mind.
Yeah. Definitely. And so when we finally caught up to the pigs, they decided that they were going to go for a little trot over the hill. So they came out of the creek and went over the hill. And we're like, okay, let's go ambush them. So we ran around the other side, and as we were going around the hill, we ran into another mob of pigs. So we decided to stalk up on these ones. And I was thinking about this one quite a lot because it was probably the best shot opportunity I could have had. But I probably rushed in regards to trying to get to it. But just before you were trying to tell me how to be aggressive but quiet, but stay subtle. I'm like, fuck, what do I do here? So I'm like, okay, stay low, go fast. And I'm going up, and there's this one decent sized sow I was going to take a shot at. And then there was a little pig next to her, and it was the one that spotted. Yeah, exactly. I didn't take enough.
You were looking at the big one. Yeah, forgot about the little one.
Exactly, and it was the one that noticed me. But I was saying to you later, like the next day, I was like, should have I in that space, should have I hopped down and army crawled for a little bit, or like what should have I done to be able to make that shot a little bit easier? and you're like, well, army crawling isn't always the best option because it can take you
ages
to get
especially
from A to
pigs
B.
feeding out across the open. Like
They were moving.
they were moving quick. You know,
Yeah.
they were moving diagonally away from you.
Yeah.
So like if they were coming towards you, you know,
Could've
kneel
just
down
stopped
and
them,
try and find a
wait.
bit of cover and tuck yourself in, wait
Yeah.
for them to come up to you. But yeah, if they're moving away, like you've got to, and that's why it's hard. Like that's why you sort of lag off and pick your spot. Boom, they've stopped for a minute. Go, get in there,
Yeah.
try and get it done. Or the other option, which we talked about and we possibly could have done, is do a big loop and then come in front of them. But the problem with us was that the wind was just sucking down the creek the whole time. So if we came in front of them, the wind's just blowing straight to them.
Yes. And
so
by this stage, it was really, really low light.
Yeah. But yeah, like if you've got to move, because the thing with belly crawling is it's not fast.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm just talking about how fast I can belly crawl.
But it's
I'm
noisy.
sure there's a few blokes out there that just wiggle like a worm and they're 40 metres in front. Whereas I'm more like a turtle crawling through the grass. But yeah, like it's quite slow for me anyway, and especially generally because I'm trying to carry a tripod with a camera and a bow. Like it's a pain in the ass to get down low. Like I'd much rather like almost try and put my ass on the ground and just walk.
Yeah.
But like hunch down as low as I can. And it kills you back, but you just do it. But you can also move faster, and it's a whole lot less. It's a whole lot quieter. Whereas I find that when you belly crawl, you're going slow and you're making a heap of noise. Yeah, well, because you're pushing and weaving through. Like you got so much more body contact with, stuff that can make noise essentially.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just walking, then but lowering your profile, you can sort of move faster and be quieter.
Yeah. I got reasonably low, I think, when I was trying to crawl up on him, and once again that little guy just spotted me. And like just so many eyes and with so little cover. Yeah.
So
it was pretty open ground. So we continued on with our original plan and went back around to try and ambush these pigs, and we unfortunately just, like I said, it was very low light by this stage, and we probably tried to pressure them a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And ran right in front of their view rather than getting to our point and waiting to ambush them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of
misjudgment. Exactly. We'll put it down to.
Exactly. And so, I mean, that was, by that stage, we literally had pigs kind of surrounding us by that stage, but it was dark. And so we had little piglets in around us, and James pretty much called one across, but the mosquitoes were fucked. They were just the slammiest.
It's like the one thing I normally carry in my, like the top pocket of my bag is like a scalpel blade, snake bandage, mozzie repellent, and a head torch. And like flying up here, had to take the mozzie repellent out of my bag, which was like the biggest sacrifice I could have made. And I said, and that's the thing, we had it back in camp, and twice we forgot it.
Got some, yeah.
Because you get out there and you like, they're not too bad most of the time, but you get on this like a swamp or somewhere wet, and you're like, oh my god, please leave me some blood. Yeah, like.
And so we were like, okay, let's get out of here. And even while we were walking back to get our shoes, so we were still in our socks by this stage. We'd probably gone maybe 2K.
Yeah, fair while
from our packs and stuff, and
following them.
Yeah, following the pigs around. So we end up having to go back, and the whole way we just got absolutely slammed by mosquitoes. So that was
standing there holding a fence for you. I'm like, please get through the fence. Hurry up.
Yeah.
They're gonna take me away.
My patience is wearing thin. And so that was kind of like the one major day of hunting, and it really it was a lot of fun that afternoon. And I would say I learned a hell of a lot just from being in that situation, going out with someone. I kind of thought in stages, I'm like, what would have I done different if I was here by myself compared to if I was here with James? And it's like, I probably just would have scared them a lot sooner. I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
or shot 4,
Yeah, maybe that as well, I'm not sure. But I mean, either way, even though we weren't successful with getting anything down, we had a lot of lessons learned, a lot of fun just being out. And
it's unreal.
It's like you said, just being near the animals is quite a crazy cool thing to have. Which led us into the next day. We're like, well, what do we want to do? Do we go searching for reds again? We hadn't heard any reds calling, roaring or anything yet. We hadn't really seen the sign apart from the rubs. So we're like, there's a fair chance they rubbed a few days ago and they've come through.
Yeah, because we went out that night as well.
Yeah, so we ended up going out that night and trying to do some calls.
Spent an hour and a half, just listening. Didn't hear any roars, and cooled off quite a bit.
Yeah.
I was let out a few things that probably
didn't sound like roars.
Sounded like a sick rooster or something like that. They're like, what the hell's that? Obviously didn't get any responses. But yeah, didn't hear anything roaring.
Yeah. And so we were like, oh, stuff it. Let's go for the pigs. Let's try to get something on the ground. So we went and we walked pretty much the exact same route we went on the night before with the pigs.
Yeah.
And didn't come across anything. We ended up going to a new section and searching there, and it was probably, I don't know, it was early light and they'd bailed out already.
Yeah.
And James was like, what do we do? We call it quits? I'm like, no, let's go check out the dam. Like, we may as well go have a look for some reds. And he's like, perfect. I was hoping you'd say that. And so we went over for a look, and
we had to get back for work, but I'm like, yeah, we got time.
We got time. We can push this. And so we went for a little wander to the other side and walked into this. I was like, let's hit the dam. Like, this is the time that I've seen them there previously. Let's go for a little wander down. And we walked in, kind of going very slow.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were moving.
We were doing a lot faster than
we had the day before.
Yeah, because like I'd sort of. Yeah.
At this stage, James literally thought there was no reds on the body.
I was like, yeah, righto. Okay.
Yeah. You're pulling my body leg,
there's red deer here.
And so we actually moseyed in pretty fast, I'd say. And we were cautious.
It was also because we were hitting it at about, it probably would have been 7:30 maybe when we were
7:30, something like that.
Yeah, like when we were first going through. So there's a difference. Like when we first went in there at 11, we're looking for bedded animals, which are hard to spot. Whereas you got this big, awesome red deer feeding in sort of, like the grass isn't that high at the moment, so you can sort of see them quite easily, even if they are in thick cover. And like, so you're almost hunting differently in the sense that you're looking for something that's standing as opposed to like antlers or some ears or something bedded in grass. Because they're quite large animals, so they'll like that grass being sort of, mid shin high, they'll disappear in it. Especially if they got the head down sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're looking for different things, and that's why we're moving faster.
Yeah. And so we'd kind of take a few steps, have a look around, like have a glass, then keep going. We just kept doing that over and over and over. And eventually we got into this paddock, and there's the tree off to the side, which we glassed pretty vigorously, I'd say, before there's like a creek bed to come up before you get over to where it is. And we got to the top of a creek bed, we had a look around, and we're like, oh, there's nothing here. Let's just kind of keep going. The dam's about 40 meters from where we were.
Yeah.
And the whole way down, I was like, I'll just keep glassing the dam. And he's like, in my head, I was like, I'd just love to see like a few antlers just kind of tipping over the top, like every once in a while, to see like a little shake of an antler or something. So I did keep my eyes on it, but didn't ever see anything. And so we were like, stuff it. Let's just go up this, like James said, this is where they had a lot of a lot of sign of different rubs coming into it. So the 3 different valleys, and we're like, let's just go up this valley because of the way the wind is.
Yeah.
And we'll just have a look. We've got about an hour left before we have to go anyway. So let's just hit it. And so we started walking up pretty quietly. I think you stopped for a piss or something, maybe, or to tie your shoe, something like that. You tie your shoes, yeah. He does that a lot too.
I know to double knot them. They just come undone all the time.
And so I got probably like 30 meters ahead, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We were on a game trail at this point that comes
pretty
up
well
beside.
used, like open, like you probably got a foot game trail, like quite prominent going up to the dam.
And there's only one patch where there's a fair bit of kind of grass / lantana coverage.
That big lantana bush sort of on the corner of the dam.
Yeah, and then that one that's a little further back. And so when I got to that one or thereabouts, which is probably about maybe 50, it's like 10 meters from the bank, but 15 meters from
the first corner, yeah.
Yeah, of like the open. So it's kind of like there's a bank that sits the whole way around the outside of the dam and a big open face of the dam. And we were walking towards the open. We had the bank covering it, and we were walking towards the open face. And I kind of scraped against like a little bit of grass on the way through. And right at that point, like this monster.
What was that?
Roar. I don't know. I'll put
sick roosters are back.
I'll put the actual sound in right here. But the actual sound, like the sound,
it's good how you can do that.
It went off, and I looked at James, and I was kind of like, there shouldn't be cows in here. Like, what the hell? There's a cow just in the dam. No, actually, sorry. Just before that happened, I heard a trickle.
Did you look?
Just before that, I had a trickle. Like there was a little trickle. And so, did I actually look back at you?
No, because I was saying you cheated me.
I didn't look back at James at all. I heard it. I'm
the
like,
whole time.
I need to be able to see if this is a cow or if it's a deer. And I put my hand out. James didn't see it. I swear I was like, stop. There's something here.
I'm putting my buff on behind. Like, I know what this is.
And so then keep walking closer and closer. And he lets out 2 more roars while we're there. And I got in close enough that I saw him for his 3rd roar. I saw him make it. And it was super cool just to watch. But I was wearing a GoPro on my forehead, and I don't know if he saw that or if he was alert because I'd made some noise potentially walking in. But he was definitely, I think, aware that there was something over to the side.
Yeah.
He was just trying to see out what it was. And by this stage, because yesterday the day before when we were hunting the pigs, I'd asked James, like, what should I do here? And he's like, you go there. And it was like, okay, cool. That's what I was kind of thinking. And so I'm like, cool, I'm in a good position here. Like, this is a good space. I just need to get down, get ready, and draw back when he comes out. Like, this is going to be pretty good. I'll just keep my eyes on him to see what's happening. And so I didn't bother to communicate at all with James.
So one thing I said to him, I'm like, you cheated me the look. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, there's always that moment when, like, whether you hear, boars fighting off in the distance or a roar or, dingoes howling. And especially, like, me and Aiden do it to each other all the time. And, like, essentially everyone but Maddie has done it to me.
Well, we did it with the pigs.
We did it with the pigs where, like, you look at each other, you turn, like, someone's always in the front. You turn back and you, like, give someone that cheeky smile of, like, we're on here. We've got it.
I think it was because I was like, that's a cow. And
yeah,
so
well, probably. I don't know.
looked.
But I, like, he just never gave it to me. He never turned back, never gave me that, like, we are on here. We've got this. So cheated me the process.
Exactly,
But anyway.
and it came back. We were sitting there, and so there's a big lone tunnel bush that we're standing next to, and James claims he was calling out to me. I never heard it, so
got it on the video.
It's on video. He's like, Matty, trying to get me to
we're
turn
like,
around.
What, 20? So that's the thing. So a few things to your credit was, like, we had that big lantana bush, and you saw that you could see the deer moving through it, and you could see that he was facing our way, and so a lot of people would have just kept, like, try to keep moving and just shoot him while he was in the dam. He was in the dam roaring to paint the picture, but. Like, you just sort of propped so that you had that sort of initial breakup between you and him. And then I saw his antlers. I'm like, okay, sick. So this is where we're sort of gonna stay. And you didn't move forward. Whereas, like, obviously things were different. And he's roaring out the other direction. Like, you easily could have taken a couple of steps and you got a beautiful quartering away shot. Yeah. So I set up with the camera behind you.
And it was actually, all the camera settings were set from the night before when we were taking the
night photos. So the first, like, 10 seconds, I turned, because he let a roar out, and I didn't, like, we hadn't heard a roar in the last,
the whole
36 hours, right? And then he let one out, and I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be the only one. And then so he let in, because I was going to try and get into position and then put the tripod down so it was all steady and, looks pretty and all the rest of it. And then he let out another one. Okay, well, obviously he might start roaring a fair bit, and I want to get the audio and video. So I just whacked the camera on, just press record. And then it took me like 15 seconds to get the actual settings right, because it's like a whiteout screen. Because for those people who understand, my ISO is at like 5,000. The shutter speed was at like one of, I think, like, it was taking a photo like every 18 seconds or something like that. So I'm changing all these settings while sort of walking in on this deer. But yeah, got him roaring 2 more times, which was just awesome to sort of experience and have now.
Which is that audio you heard just before.
Yeah.
If I can get that to work. Yeah, and so it was absolutely incredible. And then he, like, I swear, because when you talk to me about how the pigs, like, they when they know something's up, they'll kind of shoot an ear towards you or something like that. And I could kind of see his head, and he was looking straight at me through the bushes. And I don't know if he could see me or not. Like, it was the smallest little gap that I was looking at him through. But his ears, like, one ear was direct right on us. So I'm like, okay, like, there's a fair chance he knows we're here. And I just kind of, I saw him start to move, so I got down and I drew back, and he literally took a step out of the dam and looked at us as soon as he stepped out, and just went poof and ran. And so he ran. I don't
even think it wasn't even like, it was just like a glance. Like, he just looked in the direction and, like, almost just shifted his head, and then he was gone.
Yeah, it was in a second, and he ran off, and he looked back when he was probably 60, 70 meters, and then he was so curious. So as soon as he started running, I was like, meh, meh. Like, I was like, what noise do I make? I'll just make anything. So I made like a sheep barking or something. Like
something. But
I've watched plenty of videos, and they always make like a meow or like a meh or something.
But so the thing is, like, you don't even need to do that, because most of the time, like, whether it be, and if you startle something, they're going to run out to their, like, flight zone or where they're comfortable, which most animals is, it depends. Like, if you push a boar out of his bed, he's going to run out to 40 and be like, oh, what was that? Because, trees fall. Like, they might be bedded, and every so often a tree falls, like a branch above them. So, like, just because it twig snaps at 4 meters doesn't mean it's going to be something that's going to kill them.
Yeah.
But they'll always run out to where they're comfortable, depending on how bad you've scared them, and then look back.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you scare something really well, like, and they they'll just keep running. But if you've startled something, they never know that you're there, and they like it's not like they look at you, so they've just heard you, or they'll run out to somewhere they're comfortable, and then they'll look back and be like, okay, what was that? Sort of thing. And so I think this thing just had like a fleeting glance, as in, okay, there's this weird object kneeling down on a game trail that essentially, like we said, is quite prominent. And that's why I was set up originally first behind Matty, like straight on the game trail. And I'm like, he's going to walk out and we're done. Like we've got no cover. And so I took 3 steps to my left and buried myself into the lantana bush. And then I'm sitting there videoing going, Matty, and that quiet, because this thing, like, when I thought he was on the far side of the dam roaring. And it wasn't until I saw him and I'm like, oh, he's only like 20, and that's why I'm like, well, I can't really, Matty. And because he'd never looked back either.
I was just so focused.
We didn't have that sort of communication between us. And I was trying to get it, because that's what I said to him afterwards. I'm like, you probably should have buried yourself into the lantana bush, because he would have walked off. And I mean, one thing that Matty did, which was great, which a lot of new bow hunters probably don't think about or do, is like a lot of the time people let this, whatever it is, walk into where they want to shoot him at, and then they draw, right? So, for him, he would have walked out of the dam, then Matty would have drawn, he would have done the same thing, he would have run off. Whereas Matty was already at full draw, which just increases the odds of him potentially shooting this thing. So, fantastic on that. He's ready to go, ready to shoot. But yeah, like deer, and that's what I'm saying about, like before with opportunity stuff, like they're so wide. Yeah. Like even him, like he's just thinking about pussy, essentially. Yeah. But, he walked out and he's looked at this thing that's weird. And like I said, I mean, it could have been your GoPro that you had on your head. Yeah. It could have just been the fact that he'd heard something maybe in that direction. It could have been the fact that he just looked at it and goes, that looks a bit weird.
That's not usually here.
Yeah. And that, like, he could have walked in on that game trail 10 minutes before we got there. We don't know. Yeah. And he would have been like, well, what's the log sitting on it now? Yeah. So, yeah, he obviously trotted out. And, yeah.
Told me he went for a run. And I thought it was super cool, because he went for a little run up the hill, and then he was so curious that he kept running around in a circle.
He was trying to wind us,
so
figure out where we were.
Definitely make sure of it, but the whole time he's just barking at us.
Which I hated.
Yeah,
Maddie
I
loved.
was like, this is incredible. Like, just the sound was so cool. I'm like, how good is that? And James like, that's terrible. No, it's not good at all. I'm like, no, it's sick. Like, just hearing, like, it's just nature in true form. It was just so cool. And I think, like the trip itself was incredible, but then when that happened, like we were already stoked, we'd already had a fun time. Yeah. But when this all happened, it was like, it just.
Oh yeah, that was. Well, that's what I said to him. Like that was the closest I've had. Like I didn't get to see him raw, but that's the closest I've had a red deer raw. And just like that was obviously like one of your best hunting experiences, and same with mine. I'm like, that's literally something that whenever we come together in the future, we'll always talk about. And that's what that's another reason why I love bow hunting so much.
Yeah, those shared adventures. And it's like, I mean, previously, like I said to you on the drive home, in some podcasts that I haven't released as of this date yet, like there's people who ask me like, oh, who do you go hunting with? I'm like, I don't go hunting with anyone. Like I don't have any mates in the bow hunting community until I started the podcast, and all of a sudden, like I've made some friends, which is really cool. And it's like getting to share that experience and go out and learn about your experiences was like incredible. And I think it's a big call out to you and your passion of the sport, or passion of the, I guess, whatever you want to call it, a sport, the hobby, lifestyle. Yeah, like exactly. Like there's so many ways you could really put it. But it's a big testament to how much you love it, and how much you were willing to say like, hey man, what are you doing over these 3 days? I've had a fall through with something that was meant to happen. Are you available? Can we go out? Can we go have a look at your block? You're like, I don't want to hunt. I just want to help you. Like, let's just go and get out in the wild.
I'll just video you, and hopefully we can get you, your first critter. So.
Yeah, it was like that opportunity in itself was like, oh, this is incredible. Like it's kind of like a guided hunt without
pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting up with my farts, and that was
that's all I had to deal with. But I mean, for you, it's like you just said to me, any day out in the bush is going to be a good day. Like I'd prefer to be in the bush than spending 3 days in Brisbane just hanging out.
Sure.
So I was like, yeah, sick. Why not? Like, let's see if we can make it happen.
And it was unreal. Like,
yeah, and it's just like one of those situations, and I think it's like the more time you spend in the bush, obviously, the more you get to see these things. But it's just so incredible every time you do. You're like, that's why you live for it. I mean, at the same time, like I said, we didn't get didn't get the shots. We didn't get like a successful kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like
You walk out satisfied.
yeah, so satisfied, but so hungry to get back. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
how do I cancel work for 3 weeks and go?
Well, that's what I was saying. I'm like, we could just call up and say that you're sick. Call Stace and be like, look, you're gonna have to book those clients in with someone else.
Stace to my wife, call her up and say, hey babe, can you just fix
cover me,
yeah,
cover me, please. We're gonna be back in a couple of days. Yeah.
All right, you want to have a quick break? We'll go into the next part.
Definitely.